She was nothing. A shadow that scrubbed blood from marble. Liora Vale had not spoken a single word in 10 years, and tonight the dragon would finally hear the voice she buried to save everything she loved. In the neon-drenched sprawl of Shadowveil City, where skyscrapers bled electric blue into the night and cocaine bricks stamped with black dragons changed hands in velvet-lined back rooms, the Blackwood Mansion stood like a Gothic fortress carved from obsidian and arrogance. Inside its marble halls, power moved in whispers and gunshots. Outside, the city feared one name above all: Draven the Dragon Blackwood. And in the forgotten corners of that same mansion lived someone who feared everything. Liora Vale was 21, though no one ever asked her age. They called her the Mute Maid, or simply Girl, when they bothered to address her at all. Ash blonde hair scraped into a tight, severe bun, hazel eyes that never quite met anyone's gaze, thin wrists hidden beneath 2 long sleeves, a body made fragile by years of barely eating, of shrinking into walls so no one would notice her breathing. She was nothing. Every morning began the same. At 4 a.m., while the rest of the household slept off last night's excess, Liora knelt on cold marble in the East Wing foyer. The floor still smelled of copper and gun oil from whatever deal had gone wrong the night before. She scrubbed until her knuckles bled through the thin gloves she never removed, gloves that hid the real wounds, not from bleach or rough brushes, from venom thorn thread. The curse had come 10 years ago, when she was 11 and still innocent enough to believe family could be protected. A shadow witch, long dead now, but her magic lived, had cast her brothers into dragon slumber. 3 strong men reduced to stone-veined statues in a hidden vault beneath the city catacombs. Scales crept across their skin like frost, cracking slowly, inch by inch. They would turn to ash entirely unless Liora finished what the witch demanded: 3 flame veils, heavy black and gold cloaks woven from venom thorn thread that burned like liquid fire with every stitch, and one unbreakable rule: not one word, not one sound, not until the final thread was knotted. She had chosen silence the night the curse took hold. She had chosen it again every dawn since. 10 years of swallowing screams, of biting her tongue until it bled when the other maids slapped her for being slow, of letting them mock her as the useless mute thing while she carried their trays and cleaned their messes. She was nothing. Yet, every evening when the mansion quieted, she slipped into the attic, a forgotten space above the servants' wing, lit only by a single flickering bulb. There, on a splintered table, lay the flame veils. 2 complete, the 3rd almost done. 1 final stitch remained on the last cloak, 1 stitch that would free her brothers, or doom them forever if she spoke before it was finished. Tonight, like every night, her fingers trembled as she threaded the needle. The venom thorn bit deep, searing white-hot pain up her arms. She did not flinch aloud. She never did. Tears slid silently down her cheeks, dripping onto the black fabric where they hissed and vanished. She worked until her vision blurred, until the clock in the hall below struck 3. Then she stopped, because downstairs the dragon was awake. Draven Blackwood moved through his own halls like smoke and violence. Tall, broad-shouldered, black hair falling past his collar, living dragon tattoos coiled across his forearms and chest, scales that shifted and glowed molten gold when rage stirred him. Smoke curled lazily from the corner of his mouth even when he was calm. A predator in a tailored black suit, always armed, always watching. Liora had known the truth from her first week in the mansion. He was her fated flame mate. She felt it in her blood every time he passed close. The pull, the heat, the impossible ache that made her want to reach out and touch the fire beneath his skin. But she never did. She never could. She watched him now from the shadows of the upper landing, hidden behind a velvet curtain. He stood in the foyer below, speaking low to one of his lieutenants, a deal gone sour, a body to dispose of. His voice was gravel and thunder, calm in its brutality. Liora pressed a gloved hand to her chest, feeling her heart stutter against ribs too prominent from hunger. If she ever spoke his name, if she ever let even one word escape, her brothers would burn to ash in their stone prison, and the only man who could ever save her, the dragon who ruled the city with fire and fear, would finally see the broken girl who had been dying in silence right under his roof. She was nothing. But tonight, the pain in her fingers felt sharper. The final stitch waited, and somewhere in the dark, the city's most dangerous man was closer than he had ever been to hearing the voice she had buried for 10 long years. 10 years of silence had carved her hollow. Liora Vale moved through the Blackwood Mansion like breath fogging glass, there one moment, gone the next. No one remembered her face when she left a room. No one noticed the way her shoulders curved inward, protecting a heart that had learned too young how to stop hoping. Every dawn repeated the same quiet violence. She rose at 3:45 before the first guards changed shift. The servants' corridor smelled of stale coffee and cigarette ash. Liora pressed herself against the wall as two maids passed, laughing about last night's party. One bumped her shoulder hard enough to bruise. "Sorry, mutes girl," the other sneered without looking back. Liora swallowed the sting, tasted copper on her tongue, and kept walking. She was nothing. In the kitchen, she prepared trays no one thanked her for. Black coffee for the lieutenants, chilled champagne for Draven's private meetings, plates of untouched fruit for guests who never stayed long enough to eat. Her hands, gloved and scarred, trembled only when no one watched. The venom thorn burns never healed. Each night stitching reopened them, fresh welts crisscrossing old ones until her palms looked like maps of forgotten pain. At 4:30, she knelt again in the east foyer. Bloodstains from the previous night's disagreement had dried into dark petals on the marble. She scrubbed with mechanical rhythm, knees aching against stone, back bent low. A guard walked past, boots leaving fresh prints in the wet cleaner. He kicked the bucket without breaking stride. Water sloshed over her skirt. Liora did not gasp. She simply wrung out the cloth and continued. She was nothing. The other maids called her punishment a gift. Less mouth, less trouble, they said. They stole her portions at meals, hid her cleaning supplies, left filthy rags on her cot so she woke smelling of their disdain. Once, a senior housekeeper slapped her across the face for dropping a crystal glass. The crack echoed. Leora's lips split. Blood dripped onto her apron. She wiped it away with the back of her glove, tasted salt and iron, and returned to her duties without a sound. 10 years had taught her that noise invited pain, so she learned to disappear inside herself. She learned to breathe so shallowly the rise and fall of her chest went unnoticed. She learned to cry without sound, tears tracing silent paths down her cheeks, evaporating before they reached her chin. Yet the attic waited. After midnight, when the mansion settled into uneasy quiet, Liora climbed the narrow servant stairs. The door creaked once. She oiled it weakly so it no longer betrayed her. Inside, the single bulb swung gently, casting long shadows across the splintered table. The flame veils lay folded like sleeping ravens. Black silk shot through with molten gold thread. Two finished, the third spread open, edges frayed, one corner still waiting for its final stitch. She sat on the bare floorboards, unbuttoned the cuff of her glove. The skin beneath was raw, blistered, weeping. She threaded the venom thorn needle with shaking fingers. The first prick felt like lightning traveling bone deep. She bit the inside of her cheek until fresh blood filled her mouth. Stitch by stitch, the pain built. White fire raced up her arms, settled in her chest, squeezed her lungs until breathing hurt more than the needle. She thought of her brothers, 3 faces frozen in the vault beneath the catacombs. Elias, the eldest, always laughing. Rowan, quiet and steady, the one who taught her how to braid her hair. Cassian, youngest, who used to sneak her sweets from the market. Now they lay side by side on stone slabs, scales creeping over skin like creeping frostbite. Cracks spiderwebbed their chests. Each day the curse tightened. Each day they slipped closer to ash. Liora stitched faster. A sob rose in her throat. She swallowed it whole. Tears blurred the gold thread. She wiped her eyes with her sleeve, smearing ash and salt across her cheek. She was nothing, and yet she carried them all. Downstairs, the dragon never slept long. Tonight she heard him before she saw him. Heavy footsteps on the grand staircase, the faint hiss of smoke escaping parted lips. Liora froze, needle halfway through fabric. She doused the bulb with trembling fingers. Darkness swallowed the attic. Through a crack in the floorboards, she watched him pass below. Draven Blackwood walked the halls like a storm contained in skin. Black suit unbuttoned at the throat, tattoos shifting restlessly across his forearms, scales rippling as though alive. Golden glow pulsed once, twice, then dimmed. He paused at the landing, head tilting as though scenting something on the air. Smoke curled from his mouth in slow, deliberate rings. Leora's heart slammed against her ribs. The pull in her blood roared to life, hot, undeniable, terrifying. Her fated flame mate stood 20 feet below her, oblivious. She pressed her palm to the floorboards, feeling the faint vibration of his steps. Wanted, more than anything, to whisper his name. Just once, to feel what it would be like to be seen. But the curse waited. One word and her brothers burned. Draven lingered another moment, then moved on. The hallway lights dimmed behind him. Liora exhaled silently. She relit the bulb, returned to the veil. One more stitch. The venom thorn sank deep. Pain bloomed, fresh and vicious. She closed her eyes, let silent tears fall onto the fabric. They hissed faintly, absorbed into gold thread. 10 years of this. 10 years of burning in secret so others could live. 10 years of loving a man who did not know her name. She finished the row, folded the veil with reverent care. One stitch left, one word away from freedom or annihilation. She rose on unsteady legs, slipped down the stairs, back into shadows. Tomorrow the mansion would awake again. Tomorrow the maids would mock her. Tomorrow the blood would stain the marble anew. And tomorrow night the dragon would walk these halls again, closer, always closer. Liora pressed her back to the cold wall of the corridor, closed her eyes, felt the heat of him lingering in the air like smoke. She was nothing, but the final stitch waited, and somewhere in the dark heart of the city, 3 brothers clung to fading life because a girl too young to bear it had chosen silence over screams. 10 years, one stitch left, and the dragon, her dragon, was beginning to feel the pull he could not yet name. The mansion never truly slept. It breathed through its walls, low murmurs of deals sealed in blood, the clink of crystal, the occasional muffled scream cut short. Liora Vale had learned to move between those breaths, invisible, untouchable. But tonight the air tasted different, thicker, sickly sweet like rotting roses dipped in honey. Valeria, the siren Voss, arrived at dusk in a sleek black Rolls-Royce Phantom that purred like a satisfied predator. She stepped out wearing crimson silk that clung to every curve, hair the color of spilled ink cascading past her waist. Her eyes were storm gray, pupils ringed with unnatural silver. A shadow witch who had clawed her way to the top of a rival cartel by weaving curses into contracts and seduction into slaughter. The guards at the gate straightened instinctively. Even they felt the pull. Liora watched from the upper gallery, tray balanced on trembling arms. She had been sent to serve the private meeting in the dragon's study. Champagne flutes chilled to perfection, a single black rose on the silver tray, Draven's signature for guests he intended to impress or destroy. Valeria glided through the foyer like she already owned it. Her heels clicked sharp against marble. She paused at the foot of the grand staircase, head tilting as though scenting prey. Her gaze swept upward, directly to where Liora stood, half hidden in shadow. For one heartbeat, their eyes locked. Valeria's lips curved, a slow, knowing smile that said she saw everything Liora tried to hide. Then she turned away, dismissing the mute maid as beneath notice. Leora's stomach twisted. She followed at a distance, footsteps silent on the runner, delivering the tray to the study door. She knocked once, soft, barely audible, then entered when the low "enter" rumbled from within. Draven sat behind the massive obsidian desk, sleeves rolled to the elbows, dragon tattoos shifting restlessly across corded forearms. Smoke drifted from his parted lips in lazy spirals. He did not look up as Liora set the tray down. She poured 2 glasses with practiced steadiness, the crystal chiming faintly. Valeria lounged on the leather chaise opposite him, legs crossed, one crimson heel dangling. "Thank you, darling," Valeria purred, voice like velvet dragged over broken glass. She accepted the flute without glancing at Liora. Her fingers brushed the stem deliberately, silver-ringed nails catching the lamplight. Liora stepped back, melting into the corner near the bookshelves, head bowed, tray clutched to her chest like armor. Draven finally lifted his gaze. Golden eyes flicked over Valeria, assessing. "What do you want, Siren?" His voice was gravel wrapped in smoke. Valeria laughed softly. "Always so direct. I like that about you, dragon." She leaned forward, letting the silk slip from one shoulder. "I want what I've always wanted, an alliance, your empire, your fire." She traced a finger along the rim of her glass, and perhaps a taste of what they say burns hottest in Shadowveil. Liora's breath caught. She felt it then, the first thread of dark magic uncoiling in the room. Invisible to most, but not to her. Not after 10 years of living under a curse. It slithered from Valeria's fingertips, thin as smoke, wrapping around Draven's wrists like a lover's touch. The Soulburn curse. Liora had heard whispers of it in the servants' quarters, how it sank into the blood, ignited from within, cracked scales and bone, until the victim burned alive in their own skin. Draven's tattoos flared once, bright gold, then dimmed. He did not flinch, but Liora saw the faint tension in his jaw, the way smoke curled thicker from his mouth. Valeria smiled wider. "You feel it already, don't you? Just a whisper, a promise." She rose, gliding closer. Her hand settled on his shoulder. The curse tightened. Liora pressed herself harder against the bookshelf. Her heart hammered so loud she feared they would hear it. She wanted to scream, to run forward and knock the glass from Valeria's hand, to whisper, beg, warn him. But one word would end her brother's. One sound would turn stone to ash. Valeria leaned down, lips brushing Draven's ear. "Think of it, dragon. Me at your side. No more rivals. No more weakness." Her fingers trailed down his chest, pausing over his heart. The curse pulsed brighter. A faint crack appeared along one of his scales, tiny, golden, weeping heat. Draven caught her wrist. Hard. "You overstep, Siren." Valeria only laughed again. "Perhaps, but you'll come to me when the fire inside grows too hot to bear." She straightened, smoothing for dress. "I'll be waiting." She swept from the room without another glance at Liora. The door closed with a soft click. Silence fell. Draven remained seated, staring at the spot where she had stood. Smoke rose in thick coils now. He flexed his hand. The cracked scale shimmered, then sealed, but not completely. A thin line of gold remained. Liora stood frozen in the corner. She watched him rise, watched him cross to the window, staring out at the neon city below. His shoulders were rigid. For the first time, she saw something flicker in his eyes. Not rage, not power, uncertainty. She wanted to reach out, to place her gloved hand on his arm and let him feel the truth in her blood, that she was his flame mate, that she could break any curse, if only she could speak. But she could not. She slipped from the room as quietly as she had entered, down the corridor, past the ballroom where tomorrow's summit would unfold, past the guards who never noticed her. In the servants' stairwell she paused, pressed her back to the cold stone, fists clenched so tight the venom thorn burns reopened. Blood welled beneath the gloves, hot and sticky. He was dying, slowly, from the inside, and she was the only one who could save him. The final flame veil waited upstairs, one stitch left, one word away from freedom, one word away from betrayal. Liora slid to the floor, curled into herself. Silent tears burned tracks down her cheeks. 10 years of silence, 10 years of burning alone. Tomorrow the summit would unfold. Tomorrow Valeria would return. Tomorrow the curse would tighten, and Liora Vale, mute maid, nothing girl, would have to choose. Save the dragon who never saw her, or save the brothers who had once carried her on their shoulders through summer fields. The choice clawed at her chest like venom thorn. She pressed her forehead to her knees, breathed in the scent of blood and smoke. Somewhere above, in the grand study, Draven flexed his hand again. The cracked scale glowed faintly. He did not know it yet, but the pull in his blood was waking, and the girl in the shadows, the one he had never truly seen, was running out of time. The grand ballroom of the Blackwood Mansion glittered under crystal chandeliers that dripped light like frozen rain. Neon from the city skyline bled through tall arched windows, turning gold drapes electric blue. Tables groaned under champagne towers and black dragon-stamped bricks displayed like trophies. Shadowveil's most dangerous gathered, cartel lords, enforcers, witches in silk and velvet, laughing low over deals sealed in blood. Liora moved among them like smoke, tray-balanced, champagne flutes catching fractured light. She wore the plain black uniform of the staff, hair pinned tight, eyes downcast. No one looked twice. She was nothing. Valeria Voss held court near the center dais, crimson gown slashed to the thigh, silver rings glinting as she laughed at something Draven said. He stood beside her, black suit sharp, tattoos restless beneath rolled cuffs. Smoke curled from his lips in slow warning. The cracked golden scale on his forearm pulsed faintly, hotter now, brighter. The Soulburn curse had deepened overnight. He hid the pain behind cold eyes, but Liora saw it, the slight tightening of his jaw, the way his hand flexed as though fighting fire inside his veins. She circled closer, refilling glasses, invisible. Every step pulled at her blood. His presence burned hotter than venom thorn. She wanted to scream the truth, wanted to shatter every flute and beg him to run. Then Valeria moved. She raised her glass in mock toast. "To new alliances," she purred, voice carrying over the murmur. Her free hand brushed Draven's chest, casual, possessive. The curse ignited. Golden fire cracked across his skin like lightning in reverse. Scales burst outward along his arms, chest, neck. Wings tore through the back of his suit with wet, ripping sounds. He staggered, roar swallowed into a choked growl. Champagne towers toppled, shouts erupted, guards drew weapons, guests scattered. Draven dropped to one knee. Flames licked from the fissures in his scales, searing the air. Smoke poured from his mouth in thick black ropes. His golden eyes dimmed, then flared, wild, agonized. Leora's tray crashed to the floor. Crystal exploded. Champagne foamed across marble. She ran. through the chaos, past frozen guards, past Valeria's widening smile. She fell to her knees beside him, gloved hands hovering over his burning skin. Heat scorched her even through fabric. His eyes locked on hers, confused, furious, dying. The attic waited upstairs, one stitch left on the final flame veil, one stitch that would free her brothers, one word that would doom them. 10 years of silence crashed against her ribs, 10 years of swallowing pain, of watching him from shadows, of loving a man who never knew her name. Her brothers' faces flashed, Elias laughing, Rowan braiding her hair, Cassian sneaking sweets. They were slipping away, stone cracking, ash waiting. Draven's breath rattled, flames crawled higher. He reached for her, instinct not recognition, fingers brushing her wrist. Her blood sang, flame mate, fated, his. She could let him burn, save her family, stay silent forever. Or she could speak and lose everything. Tears streamed down her face, silent at first. Then a sob broke free, small, hoarse, cracked from disuse. The room stilled. Valeria's smile faltered. Draven's eyes snapped wide. Liora leaned close, voice raw, trembling, barely above a whisper. Draven! Her name on her tongue felt like breaking glass, like fire and freedom and terror all at once. My name is Liora. I am your flame mate. The words hung in the air, fragile, impossible. Draven froze. Flames paused mid-lick. The curse stuttered. Golden cracks dimmed just enough. He stared at her, really looked. At the ash-blonde hair escaping its bun, at hazel eyes swimming with 10 years of unshed tears, at the thin gloves hiding blistered hands, at the thin, trembling girl who had scrubbed his floors, carried his trays, watched him from shadows every day for a decade. You, he rasped, voice gravel and smoke and something new, gulped, raw and choking. The ballroom held its breath. Leora's lips trembled. She had spoken. The curse would claim her brothers now. Stone to ash, gone forever. But Draven's hand closed around her wrist, not burning her, shielding her. His wings flared protectively, curling around them both like black and gold armor. Realization flooded his face. Horror, rage, possession. The mute maid, the nothing girl, his flame mate, and she had just broken 10 years of silence to save him. The ballroom was frozen in stunned silence. Golden flames still licked at Draven's cracked scales, but they no longer spread. The Soulburn curse hung suspended, caught in the echo of Leora's broken whisper. She knelt before him, trembling, tears carving clean paths through the soot on her cheeks. Her voice, hoarse, unused for 10 years, had shattered everything. Draven's golden eyes burned into hers, not with rage, not with confusion, with something rawer, guilt, horror, and a possession so fierce it stole the air from the room. You, he rasped again, voice cracking like dry timber. He reached for her face, gloved fingers brushing her jaw. The touch was gentle, impossibly gentle for a man who ruled with fire and fear. His wings, half unfurled and scorched, curled closer, shielding her from the staring crowd. Liora flinched instinctively, 10 years of shrinking from hands that struck. But his did not strike. They cradled. They trembled. He rose in one fluid motion, scooping her against his chest as though she weighed nothing. Heat poured from him, dragon fire, tempered now, warm instead of burning. She gasped softly, the first real sound she had made in a decade. He carried her through the parted sea of guests, wings dragging faint sparks across marble. Valeria Voss stood rooted, silver-ringed hands clenched, face pale with fury. Draven did not look at her. His focus was singular. The mute maid in his arms, the nothing girl, was his flame mate. He took the stairs 2 at a time, up to the servants' wing, past the narrow corridor she had walked every night, into the attic. The door banged open, the single bulb swayed, casting wild shadows. The flame veils lay on the splintered table, 2 finished, the third spread wide with 1 stitch remaining. Venom thorn thread glinted like black lightning. Draven set Liora down gently on the bare floorboards. He stared at the cloaks, at the blistered, weeping hands she tried to hide, at the silent tears still falling. 10 years, he said, voice low and wrecked. You've been here, under my roof, burning for them, from me. He dropped to 1 knee before her, a king kneeling to a maid. His hand closed over hers, careful, reverent. The cracked scale on his forearm pulsed once, then began to knit closed. Her voice had paused the curse. Now her nearness healed it. Liora shook her head, mute again from shock. She pointed to the veil. 1 stitch left, her brother's. Draven understood. He lifted the needle with steady fingers. The venom thorn would burn him too, but he did not hesitate. He guided her trembling hand to the fabric. Together they pierced the final thread. Pain flared white-hot. Liora bit her lip to keep from crying out. Draven hissed, smoke curling from his mouth, but he held firm. He knotted the stitch with dragon fire, golden flame licking the thread, cooling the venom, sealing the curse. A distant rumble echoed through the city. Deep beneath the catacombs, stone cracked and fell away. 3 brothers drew breath for the first time in 10 years. Liora sagged forward. Sobs broke free, real, ragged, audible. Draven caught her, pulled her into his arms. Wings wrapped around them both, black and gold cocoon against the cold attic air. You saved me, he murmured against her hair. 10 years of silence, for strangers, for brothers, for a man who never saw you. His voice cracked. I will spend the rest of my life making sure you are never invisible again. He tilted her chin up, golden eyes fierce with promise. Then he leaned down and bit, gentle, claiming, at the curve of her neck. Dragon fire met flame mate blood. Pain flared, then bloomed into heat, healing. Her burns faded, scars smoothed to silver lines. Her voice, raw, unused, found strength. She laughed, a small, broken sound at first, then louder, clear, free. Draven pulled back, stunned. He cupped her face. Say my name again. Liora. Then stronger. Liora. He kissed her then, slow, deep, devouring, smoke and fire and need. She kissed him back, hands tangling in his hair, tasting the man who had ruled her world from afar. Later, on the mansion rooftop, under neon city lights, he held her close. Wings folded around them like a cloak. Her brothers were safe, awakening, confused but alive. Valeria had fled into the night, her cartel crumbling without the dragon's fire to claim. Liora rested her head against his chest, listened to the steady thunder of his heart. For the first time in 10 years, she spoke without fear. I love you, she said softly. Always have. Draven's arms tightened. Smoke curled gently from his lips. 8 years of silence? No, 10. 10 years of silence. He pressed a kiss to her temple. Now you'll never be silent again, my flame. You are mine, and I am yours. The city sprawled below, neon veins pulsing like dragonfire. Liora smiled against his skin, laughed again, bright, unshackled. The mute maid was gone. In her place stood Liora Vale, flame mate, survivor, voice reclaimed. And the dragon who had once ruled alone now held her like she was the only treasure that mattered.